September 1944. The Allied push across France seems unstoppable. But near the quiet town of Arracourt, a storm is gathering. Here, in the mud and fog of Lorraine, one of the greatest tank battles of World War II is about to erupt. This isn't just a story of steel against steel. It's the story of how a band of American citizen soldiers, driving what many considered an inferior machine, faced down the pride of the German Panzer and won. The American 4th Armored Division had been at the tip of General Patton's spear, racing across France. Its men were not professional soldiers, they were farmers, mechanics, and clerks from small towns across America. Their workhorse was the M for Sherman, a tank often criticized for its thin armor and modest cannon. Now, exhausted and low on supplies, they found themselves directly in the path of a massive German counterattack. The objective: to sever Patton's supply lines and halt the Allied advance in its tracks. Spearheading this assault was the 5th Panzer Army, equipped with the fearsome Panther tank. The Panther was a masterpiece of German engineering. Its thick, sloped frontal armor was almost impervious to the Sherman's 75mm gun, while its own long-barreled 75mm cannon could punch through a Sherman from over a mile away. On paper, it was a mismatch. The Germans were confident. They had the superior technology, experienced crews, and the element of surprise. They expected to roll right over the Americans. The morning of September 19th dawned with a thick, heavy fog blanketing the rolling hills around Arracourt. It was this fog that would become the Americans' greatest ally. German commanders, blinded by the poor visibility, sent their Panther battalions forward, expecting little resistance. They stumbled directly into a hornet's nest. The American tankers of Combat Command, under the brilliant leadership of Colonel Bruce Clark, had not been idle. They used the terrain, hiding their Shermans in woods, behind hills, and in the shallow depressions of the muddy fields. The fog turned the battlefield into a series of deadly, close-range knife fights. The Panthers' long-range advantage was gone. Now, it was a game of nerve and reaction speed. A German Panther, a 45-ton Predator, would suddenly emerge from the mist, its massive form looming just a few hundred yards away. But before its crew could react, an American Sherman, smaller and more nimble, would dart out from a concealed position. Its gunner wouldn't aim for the Panther's impenetrable front. Instead, they'd target its weaker side or rear armor. The American crews had drilled this tactic relentlessly. They called it Wolf packing. A single Sherman was no match for a Panther head-on, but 3 or 4, working in concert, could be lethal. While one Sherman drew the Panther's attention, others would maneuver rapidly around its flanks. The Panther's turret traversed slowly, a fatal flaw in a close-quarters brawl. American gunners, with their faster power traverse systems, could get on target, fire 2 or 3 rounds into the Panther's vulnerable sides, and then quickly retreat back into the fog. Radio chatter crackled with a mix of calm, professional reports, and the raw tension of combat. Panther, 2 o'clock, 400 yards. I'm moving to your right flank. Cover me. Target hit. He's burning. Explosions ripped through the morning mist as American shells found their mark. Giant pillars of black smoke marked the graves of once mighty Panthers, their crews caught completely by surprise. The hunters had become the hunted. The fighting was brutal and relentless, stretching over several days. The Germans, stunned by their initial losses, kept throwing more tanks into the fray. But the American tankers of the 4th Armored Division had mastered the battlefield. They were fighting on their terms. They used artillery brilliantly, calling down devastating barrages to break up German formations before they could even engage. Fighter bombers, the Jabos, swooped down when the weather cleared, wreaking havoc on German supply columns and panicking their tank crews. One legendary engagement involved Sergeant Joseph Czernowski. His Sherman was knocked out, but he and his crew bailed out, took over another tank, and went right back into the fight, destroying several more enemy vehicles. This was the spirit of Arracourt. It wasn't about having the biggest tank. It was about having the biggest fight in you. It was about teamwork, quick thinking, and exploiting every single weakness of a technologically superior foe. The German commanders grew desperate. They couldn't understand how their elite Panther brigades were being systematically dismantled by what they considered second-rate opposition. Their rigid doctrine couldn't adapt to the fluid, unpredictable tactics of the Americans. The farm boys were outthinking and outfighting the seasoned veterans of the Panzerwaffe. They turned the muddy fields of Arracourt into a graveyard of German armor. By the end of the battle, the results were staggering. The American 4th Armored Division had destroyed over 200 German tanks and assault guns, a huge portion of which were Panthers. Their own losses were fewer than 30 Shermans. It was one of the most lopsided armored victories of the entire war. The Battle of Arracourt proved that technology alone doesn't win battles. It's the human element, the skill, the courage, and the ingenuity of the soldiers inside the machines that ultimately decides the outcome. The victory at Arracourt secured Patton's southern flank and allowed the Allied advance to continue. Yet, it remains one of the lesser-known battles of the war, overshadowed by later events like the Battle of the Bulge. But for those who fought there, in the fog and the mud, it was a defining moment. It was where American tankers, with their grit and clever tactics, proved that brains and bravery could triumph over brute force. They were not just tank crews. They were masters of armored warfare, who earned a victory for the ages. Thank you for watching. If you found this story of courage and ingenuity as fascinating as we did, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more hidden stories from history. We'll see you in the next one.